Hi, I'm Gerard, a primary school teacher with a predictable work schedule. My work responsibilities are quite routine during school hours, with specific times for various classes and meetings with staff on Thursdays, which usually last up to 14 hours. As a result, I always manage to get home by 6 o'clock in the evening. My beloved wife, Terry, who is 35 years old, always looks exhausted on Thursday evenings due to intense workouts at the gym. Consequently, I often take it upon myself to cook dinner while she refreshes herself in the shower and does other household chores such as making the bed. However, our routine was disrupted when the director of our school unexpectedly canceled the collective meeting for that day due to the sudden visit of the district inspector. Having regained my free time, I quickly returned to my classroom to finish work on my grades and realized that it was only 2:30. Taking advantage of the opportunity, I impulsively decided to go home earlier than scheduled to cook dinner and do the remaining chores around the house before Terry returned from the gym. Lately, she has been gradually distancing herself from me, and I hoped that a romantic candlelit dinner in a relaxed atmosphere, free from pressing household issues, would be able to revive the closeness and passion that we once shared. Our marriage has often been at the mercy of fate, usually related to financial problems. It became obvious to me that she had become more detached, showing an increasing desire to control all aspects of our lives. This led to her becoming stubborn and entering into conflicts when something did not go according to her rules. Despite all these difficulties, I remained patient. I got home earlier than usual that day and parked the car in a remote garage, strategically located far from home. This was done in the first years of our children's lives to ensure they had a restful sleep, as the noise of the car did not interfere. Their sleep was invaluable not only for their health, but also for our sanity. It gave us much-needed quiet time to recuperate while they were peacefully napping. As I was walking slowly towards our two-story house, I noticed Terry's car parked outside. This was a common occurrence during her training days, as she preferred to take the bus. Concentrating on putting things in order, I quietly entered the house through the back door. As a person who knows how to fix things around the house, I was proud that all the door hinges and moving parts in our house were in excellent condition, working smoothly and without annoying sounds. The sounds of smashing doors or creaking hinges were what really bothered us. When I entered the kitchen, my attention was immediately drawn to Terry's purse, which was still on the table. I knew she would be very upset about this, as Terry always tried to keep her purse handy wherever she was. This unexpected sight diverted my attention from the usual cleaning and forced me to be more attentive to the surrounding details. On the floor near the kitchen counter lay sports clothes consisting mainly of a tight-fitting jumpsuit and a large towel. At that moment, faint sounds came from our bedroom upstairs. Perhaps Terry had suddenly fallen ill and was now upstairs, I naively assumed. I carefully climbed the carpeted stairs. The steps were soft and thoughtful. Suddenly, I almost tripped over men's shoes blocking the way. These were not my own shoes, and they did not match the long trousers and shirt that came with them. When I climbed the remaining stairs, a chaotic picture appeared before my eyes. Scattered underwear and socks lay mixed with Terry's seductive lingerie, the kind that was intended for special occasions such as a wedding anniversary. I did not expect such a sight. Being in complete silence, conflicting emotions overwhelmed me. My rational mind came into conflict with the reality of my marriage experience, which had always been built on innocence, trust, and unshakable faith in the loyalty, love, and devotion of my wife. I froze in place, my body covered with perspiration. My blood pressure dropped sharply, and my heart stopped beating for a moment. I had to sit down on the stairs to collect my thoughts. Some distrust quickly turned into an unusual surge of anger. I'm usually characterized by a calm, unflappable character, especially as a teacher working with a class of 30 different children. But at that moment, that calmness left me. Suddenly, adrenaline surged through my veins, and I experienced a feeling of rage that I had never encountered before. It was as if I had never been in a real fight before, and these emotions were completely alien to me. Nevertheless, despite the influx of these incomprehensible sensations, I tried to keep my composure. With an anxious desire to learn more, I carefully climbed the stairs. Each step was quiet and cautious. The destination of my unhealthy curiosity turned out to be an unusual wardrobe from which you could get into both the bedroom and the bathroom. Passing through the bathroom, I found myself on the threshold of a spacious dressing room which smoothly turned into a bedroom. Looking through the partially open door of the room, located at an ideal distance, my gaze stopped at the bed. It was as if I'd become an involuntary spectator of a chilling adult film, unable to take my eyes off it. When I listened, the air was filled with moans and wheezes full of violent passion. Overwhelmed by the tension of the moment, I instinctively reached for my phone to capture the shocking scene. It was very important to document these moments as a tangible reminder that this was not some fictional nightmare, but an undeniable reality. Armed with this evidence, I had to talk to Terry about the heartbreaking betrayal unfolding right before my eyes. My gaze was riveted to the sight. I could not tear myself away from the sight of my wife, my lover, the companion of my whole life, a person I trusted unconditionally, the mother of our adult children, and a woman who in her 40s diligently maintained her physical shape by helping local charities and expressing her unwavering love for me. She would seem to have betrayed me in the most important thing. Overcome by a sense of betrayal, I abruptly stopped recording and quietly descended the stairs. After leaving our house, I went wandering, not knowing where to go. In the end, I ended up in a distant park a few miles from our house. There, I washed my face, sat down on the grass, and began to watch the recording, turning off the sound so as not to disturb the children playing nearby. The destruction of my usual life and everything that I had managed to accept as normal unfolded before my eyes like a digitized reality on a phone screen. The destruction of our marriage shattered me at that moment. Tears were streaming down my face, and I felt like a balloon drifting in the wind, tied only by a fragile thread not allowing me to disappear into the boundless sky. Fast forward to about 6 o'clock in the evening, the usual time of my return from the meeting. I was at the back door of our house again, and Terry immediately sensed that something was wrong. My disheveled appearance, bloodshot eyes, and pale complexion were indisputable signs. Worried, she asked softly, "Darling, what's wrong? You're so pale. Is everything okay?" Offering to bring me a drink, she asked, "Are you all right?" There was genuine concern in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to reveal the true cause of my disorder. With a trembling voice, I simply replied, "No, it's okay. Maybe I ate something and my stomach hurt. I just need to take a shower and go to bed." Terry replied in a sympathetic tone, "Okay, honey, but be sure to keep a container nearby in case you get sick. We don't want any dirt to get on the freshly laundered sheets." She didn't know yet that I knew that these sheets were no longer perfectly clean. They were stained with something much worse than yesterday's food. Now they showed traces of betrayal. I plucked up the courage and answered, "Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm going to sleep in the spare room until I recover," I said, heading to the bedroom on the ground floor. Over the next few days, Terry remained the same as before, and I went about my business on autopilot, hiding in the spare room so that I could see her as little as possible. But I understood that it would take a long time to use an excuse, and I would not succeed badly. Reluctantly, I returned to our bedroom, but a nagging sense of betrayal haunted me in this nest of infidelity. Despite my discomfort, Terry didn't seem to notice my concern and continued to behave as usual. Monday was approaching, and I finally made a firm decision on what to do. I wanted to find out if this was a common occurrence or just a one-time thing. Therefore, I informed the director about an unforeseen medical procedure that I had to undergo the next day. He immediately arranged for a replacement teacher to work in my classroom. On Tuesday morning, as usual, I parked my car a few streets away from our neighborhood, then quietly returned to our street, trying not to catch the eyes of the neighbors. Knowing the back entrances to the yards located next to our house, I headed to the garage located at the back of the plot. There, I changed into comfortable clothes and put on soft socks so that the steps were quiet. The waiting game had begun. Unexpectedly, crossing the threshold of my house last Tuesday, I remembered that there was not a single additional car parked in our driveway. Therefore, I could not count on the sound of a car approaching to notify me of the arrival of guests. I had to rely on my own feelings. Cautiously on tiptoe, I made my way through the garden, bypassing the hedges and shrubs that we had thoughtfully planted for privacy from the road. Finally, I found a place where our front door was clearly visible, but at the same time I was covered with foliage. Standing patiently in place, I could hear Terry going about her daily business, completely oblivious to my presence. It was obvious that she was completely confident in the usual sequence of events. The dishwasher was bustling in the kitchen, and the living room was being cleaned, vacuumed, and dusted. This routine lasted until about 10:30. Then Terry went upstairs. I could hear the sounds of the shower, then silence, and then the sound of the toilet flushing. After about 30 minutes, she came down the stairs and left the front door ajar. I didn't have to wait long. Around 11:30 he appeared. I didn't know who he was, but he entered through the left side of our gate. My phone took a 10-second video recording, capturing side profiles and even an almost straight view of his face. Without hesitation, he quickly walked inside through the door. The next words that reached my ear sent shivers down my spine. "Hi, sweetheart. I hope you're ready for another intense workout," he said. Terry's response sounded natural. "Of course, you always like it when I wear this. I sometimes wonder if they don't captivate you so much." Perhaps it was these exchanges that strengthened my suspicions. It was not a fleeting meeting, but a constant affair. The care scheme of their intimate meeting suggested a well-rehearsed routine. Having watched enough, I dared not continue watching from my place, since entering the house meant bringing trouble upon myself. They had just entered the bedroom, and I, trying to regain my composure, headed to the garage. My heart was pounding uncontrollably, demanding a moment of calm. But curiosity forced me to delve deeper into this mystery. Who, where, and why? How do I tell Terry that I know about her cheating? What exactly is she up to? All this information hit me like a whirlwind, completely turning my world upside down. It dawned on me that I would never be able to love my wife, Terry, the way I used to. The betrayal was too deep. I understood that some people believe that with proper consultation and a certain degree of dedication on both sides, such situations can be overcome. But it was quite obvious that Terry's commitment level was alarmingly low. From now on, I would never be able to fully enjoy our intimate relationship with her. I didn't notice any traces of the use of protective equipment anywhere. Recently, sex had become a rare phenomenon, and it was obvious. If she is engaged in intimacy with another man and does not talk about it openly, then who knows what else she can get infected with. The why was the biggest concern. Why was she looking for intimacy elsewhere, and why didn't she inform me of her wishes in advance? It suddenly dawned on me that this act of intimate betrayal was just a symptom of a much deeper problem, a lack of trust and an unwillingness to share intimacy. My marriage was in complete disarray, and she destroyed the foundation of our relationship. I couldn't help but wonder when and where it all started. I knew that Terry had been going to the gym for at least 3 years. The gym she went to was only 2 bus stops from our house and was popular with several married ladies in our neighborhood. I thought it was a great concept because it allowed Terry to connect with other women and create a sense of community for others. These ladies became very close to her, so much so that they even persuaded her to participate in various charity events held in the neighborhood. Maybe the gym could be a good place for me too. I can join Terry at her gym and maybe meet new people in the area. It seems to me that this is a great opportunity to establish contact with other people and contribute to the life of society by participating in charity events. In addition, the convenience of the gym located just 2 bus stops from our house makes it even more attractive. I will be able to improve my fitness and at the same time establish relationships with like-minded people. This is definitely worth considering as a starting point on my path to a healthy lifestyle and participation in public life. The group consisted exclusively of married women, and during our classes, they mostly dominated the conversations. It looked like a weak excuse to exclude me from the group, since they were worried about who would be at home while I went to the gym. But I persisted. and the following Monday, I managed to join them. When I entered the hall, it seemed to me that I had entered a saloon where someone had ordered milk. All eyes were fixed on me, and I could not help noticing the murmurs exchanged by the ladies. Terry assured me that they just weren't used to seeing her accompanied during regular gym sessions. The lesson began with the usual warm-up and stretching exercises. Then for an hour and a half we alternated exercises at the stations, ensuring that each muscle group was properly worked out. I continued to study as long as possible, but after about 30 minutes, I felt that I needed to pause and take a breath. It became obvious that my blood sugar level was falling, which required immediate consumption of sweet treats. Realizing this, I took a break to eat marmalade, and Terry was sympathetic to my need. Sitting down on the next chair, I began to watch Terry more closely, and it became noticeable that she was visibly worried. Her gaze kept darting towards the staff area where the instructors were coming out into the main hall. Gradually, I began to pay closer attention to the gym around me. It was like any other gym that can be found anywhere in the world. Exercise machines were scattered around, and at each station there was a wall mirror allowing you to assess your posture and muscle relief at any time. With curiosity, I walked around the hall until my gaze stopped at the wall with information about the staff located near the exit of the hall. I approached it partly to distract myself and pass the time until the end of classes with Terry. The photo at the top caught my attention. After reading the description, I saw a woman whose age was difficult to determine but undoubtedly had a good figure and exceptional physical fitness. I couldn't help but think about her impressive figure. Her name was Elizabeth Wells, the director and owner of the establishment. Next to her name was a contact mobile phone number in working hours. Under her photo, I noticed 3 more people, 2 women and 1 man. At that moment, I stopped. The man in the photo turned out to be Terry's lover. This was the same man who, with the consent of my wife, entered into an affair. Curiosity got the better of me, and I continued reading his description. And so, Mr. Philip Blunt, a respected leader in the field of training regiment planning and personal body training. Mentally writing down his phone number, I accidentally looked at Terry and realized that she was no longer at the station where I had last seen her. Intrigued, I repeated my journey and carefully examined all the stations in search of my wife. After a while, I noticed her engaged, as it seemed to me, in a tense conversation with a man who was partially hidden by the lifting mechanism. Apparently, the man was standing at the entrance to the service area, and he was obviously not allowed inside. She gave him the signal to leave and hurried back to the station where she was waiting. Not knowing about my observation and the conversation that took place, she did not guess about my growing anger. This feeling was unfamiliar to me, and when Terry eventually returned to where I was sitting, she immediately noticed my anxious state. "Are you okay? What is it?" she asked anxiously. "Do you need some time to stabilize your blood sugar?" I replied, "Yes, but everything is fine now. Are you ready to go?" When she wanted to answer my question, Miss Wells announced on the speakerphone in the gym. I noticed Terry's silent reaction. The usual final exercise session for today was canceled due to the fact that Mr. Blunt suddenly fell ill and had to leave. A chorus of groans swept through the hall, clearly indicating that most of the women present were looking forward to his classes. Intrigued, I thought about the significance of this fact and decided that it required further study. Feeling Terry's relief, I said, "Let's go," in a hurry. She quickly gathered her towel and purse in a specially designated place where everyone keeps their things during training. As we were leaving, an unknown woman approached Terry, catching her by surprise. "What a pity that Phil couldn't finish today as usual," the woman commented. Terry nodded in agreement and walked briskly to the car, clearly indicating that she did not want to discuss this topic anymore. "Okay, see you later," Terry squeaked dismissively and jumped into the car with amazing speed. The way back was surprisingly calm. Terry seemed relaxed, lying with her head thrown back, eyes closed, and deliberately taking deep breaths. I couldn't help but pay attention to these subtle details. Perhaps now that she's clearly relieved, I can ask her more and find out more. "It was a very intriguing session, my dear," I remarked. "Apparently everything in this hall is very well equipped. No wonder you look so slim and fit." Terry gratefully replied, "You're absolutely right. They have an impressive program. I really like going there. The women there are also very nice. But I'm very sorry for your coach, Mr. Blunt." "You mean Philip Blunt," I added. "He usually ends each session with a complex exercise program that really tests the limits of everyone's abilities, ensuring that everyone leaves with the feeling that they have given their best. Unfortunately, he wasn't there today." I panicked when I realized that she was completely dedicated to cheating. I was well aware of the extent to which he pushes your body to the limit, but all I could say was an indecisive, "Well, yes, perhaps by next Thursday he will start feeling better again." I couldn't help but think about the upcoming meeting between my wife and Mr. Blunt scheduled for next Thursday. It was time to focus and prepare for the following week. I found myself on school pickup duty. For those unfamiliar with this term, it means that teachers monitor the area where parents can pick up their children by car. As a rule, this is a chaotic space where children can't wait to get home, communicate with friends, and find their parents, while parents also get into this fuss, trying to keep their composure in an endless string of cars that periodically moves forward, hoping that their child will be ready by the time they get to the end of the queue. To my surprise, as the time neared the end, a car pulled up, and behind the wheel was the same woman who tried to talk to Terry during yesterday's gym class. "Hello," she greeted me. "I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with this whole process, and I completely forgot about the time. My son Timothy, according to the teachers, is here." We often encounter such a situation, especially if someone has come to school recently. I promised to go and look for him while my colleague looks after the rest of the children. As I approached Timothy's classroom, I noticed that he was talking to another student. "Hi, Tim," I greeted him. "Your mom has already arrived to pick you up, so let's go to the gathering place together." He looked slightly taken aback by my statement. Considering that he was in the last grade of elementary school, he did not seem to be a person who could forget about the meeting or be distracted in such matters. "Strange," he remarked. "Usually on Friday afternoons my mom works out with a fitness instructor. As a rule, she doesn't have time to pick me up. When I studied at the previous school, it happened that she came even at 5:30. The mention of a fitness instructor immediately caused me alarm. Despite this, I tried to keep my composure and engage in casual conversation. "It's nice to hear that your mom takes care of herself. Sports are really very important for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. By the way, do you happen to know who this instructor is?" I silently hoped that the answer would not confirm my suspicions. "His name is Bounty or something similar," Timothy replied. "In addition, he works at a nearby gym offering private lessons for people without leaving home. As an adult, I strive to follow in his footsteps. My mom finds great pleasure in his company during training every Friday night. When we get home, she looks incredibly calm and radiant. It's a wonderful sight. Since Mom rarely has time to cook on Fridays, we usually get takeout food," the boy added. I couldn't help but think that this man, Bounty, must be providing his services not only to my wife. I walked Timothy to the car, and his mother loudly thanked me for my care. "No problem," I reassured her. "It's all part of the service. By the way, I don't think we've met before. My name is Gerard Daniels. Glad to meet you." I held out my hand, and she introduced herself as Mary Jones. She mentioned that she saw me at the gym last Thursday when I came in with my wife, Terry. She apologized for Terry's hasty departure, explaining that Mr. Bounty's absence had disrupted the daily routine that evening. At that moment, her whole behavior changed dramatically. Before that, she looked like a repentant parent who was late to pick up a child from school, but in an instant, her face turned pale, and she became alert. She flinched slightly, her excitement becoming obvious. With doubt in her voice, she said, "Yes, okay, see you later, Mr. Daniels. Goodbye," and she left quickly. It was time to forge my own path, a future that I once believed was planned during a conversation with my future ex-wife Terry, but now that future seemed bleak to me. It painted a lonely existence without Terry, and perhaps without anyone else. Having experienced anger, I went on an unexpected journey, plunging into the world of revenge. Along the way, I began to meticulously study those subtle aspects that often go unnoticed in the daily life of married couples. Who is responsible for paying the bills? Which insurance company do we rely on? When do I need to pay for utilities? Which account should be used for specific payments, and at what time? These questions did not give me peace of mind while I diligently replenished my piggy bank of information. To my surprise, I discovered that our mortgage debt is just a minor amount waiting to be repaid. I was amazed when I discovered that an impressive amount of money had accumulated in my retirement account, $850,000. I'm sincerely grateful to our teachers' union for standing up for mandatory contributions to the Super Boarding House Fund as one of the main conditions of a teacher's work. After a deep, detailed study of this topic on the internet, I realized that there was no way I could avoid the fact that our assets would have to be divided equally and without Terry's knowledge. Since our children are already independent, we have a significant amount in our cash account intended for our upcoming trip abroad, about $3,500. And the dream trip I was planning was out of the question now. Deciding to act quickly before Terry guessed that I knew about her betrayal, I set myself the task of emptying this account as quickly as possible. Acting unnoticed, I sabotaged various appliances in the house, deliberately causing them to malfunction by disconnecting one wire or another. I ensured that these problems occurred when Terry was not at home. When she asked about repairs, I made up a story attributing the troubleshooting to a fictional Mr. Smith. I mentioned the exorbitantly high amount he had quoted and claimed that he had kindly agreed to accept a lower cash payment. I carefully hid this money from prying eyes. Using this approach, I successfully hid about $15,000. In addition, I made purchases of tools and other goods for cash, which I then showed to Terry, and the next day I returned them to get the money back. I'm aware that this behavior is deception, but Terry's actions have already undermined the principles of honesty and trust in our relationship. This whole situation was turning me into something I could never have imagined becoming a liar. Meanwhile, Terry continued her intimate meetings on Thursdays with Bounty. I stopped making any effort to maintain a romantic relationship with Terry. Instead, we just coexisted as roommates. Gradually, my personal belongings began to disappear, finding their new home in boxes stored in the garage. Terry rarely looked there, so the rearrangement went unnoticed. When she asked why some of my personal items were no longer on the shelves, I waved her off, saying that I either accidentally broke them or lost interest in them. Apparently, she was pleased with this reaction, primarily because most of my things did not match Terry's preferred color scheme or desired atmosphere in the room. When most of my things were cleared away in this manner, it did not have a significant impact on the overall atmosphere in the house. It made me realize to what extent I had succumbed to Terry's dominance in our lives. I decided to withdraw all available funds from my pension fund and bought a small house on the outskirts of the city. It had only 2 bedrooms and a small courtyard, along with a garage, and was conveniently close to the school where I worked. Even more pleasantly, the remainder of the mortgage loan allowed me to comfortably pay it off with just half of my salary. It wasn't a luxury mansion, but it's incredible how affordable and profitable real estate can be if we don't chase flashy and popular areas. While the separation process was ongoing, I gradually moved my personal belongings to the new house. It was also not difficult to furnish the house, as I easily found second-hand or used items in thrift stores. That's how I felt about my life, as a collection of used things once loved by me but now deemed unnecessary. I had to get what I deserved. It was time for the players to get a well-deserved reward. And it was at this moment that I met Mary Jones again, but this time she took the initiative and approached me. The memory of this moment will forever remain in my memory. Once again, this happened during the usual gathering of children after school. As the remaining teacher, I found myself alone with Timothy, her son, and was anticipating her arrival. When she finally appeared, it was impossible not to notice her agitated expression and traces of recent tears. Teachers often pay attention to these subtle signals because they can provide valuable information about students' personal lives and suggest ways to improve their learning. "Mr. Daniels, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked timidly. "Of course, there's no one else here, so don't be shy. You can take a seat and come to my office," I replied, referring to the benches placed around the school. She parked nearby, and Timothy busied himself with a soccer ball. We settled down on a bench located next to the pickup area. "I don't know how to start," she hesitated, preparing to share something important with me. "I don't know how familiar you were with the gym where you saw me," she said, meeting my gaze. "But my wife Terry is a regular visitor, and he plays an important role in keeping her fit and active," I answered cautiously, feeling that this was not all. She seemed to be on the verge of tears and spoke with difficulty. "Is she related to Philip Bounty?" I asked, trying to get down to business. "You have no idea how much this disgusting man is involved with your wife," she declared, her voice full of anger. "I think I have some information. I really want to hear what you have to say," I encouraged, with renewed confidence. "He's a gambler. The only purpose of his presence there is the desire to sleep with as many women as possible who visit that place," she said emotionally, overwhelmed, holding back tears. I was curious and I asked, "How did you find out?" With tears in her eyes, she stammered, "Because I was one of them." Emotionally overwhelmed, she explained with tears in her eyes, "I'm telling you about this only because I finally realized who he really is and, more importantly, what he is." Taking a deep breath, she continued, "A week ago, we had a regular, intimate relationship. He came to me every Friday around 12:30. Don't get me wrong, he was truly skilled, a master of his craft. He had the ability to ignite every part of my being." Lost in her thoughts, she looked longingly at the sky as if reliving the moments they spent together. My gaze followed her example, but with a different purpose. I also remembered our meetings, but not with such longing. "I'm sorry," she continued regretfully. "I cherished our shared experiences, but they ended abruptly when he replaced me without explanation. It's like I was just thrown out. I hoped for our future, but alas, this was not to be. Having experienced a divorce, I longed for the affection and companionship that marriage gives. I hoped to experience it again, but with him. But my expectations were shattered when he caught me by surprise with his unexpected behavior. I was completely stunned. How could this woman consider it acceptable to divulge all this information to me? Obviously, she was very angry. I hurried to answer, realizing that marital relations do not always coincide with our ideas. Looking into my eyes, she realized that I was experiencing pain and suffering. "You already know, don't you?" she asked slowly, shaking her head in disbelief. "You know that he was involved with Terry, your wife." "Yes, I already know everything, Mary. I'm grateful to you for sharing this, although I must admit I barely managed to hide my anger. But I already have a plan to resolve this situation. I really believe in the concept of karma, and I have a feeling that it will soon begin to act. This vile man deserves to be punished," I responded. Mary almost screamed, "He doesn't care about the feelings and well-being of other people, using them solely for his own satisfaction. He brags about it to his friends in the pub. If you need my help in seeking retribution, please feel free to let me know. Oh, this scoundrel will have to face the consequences, and they won't be easy," she muttered resolutely, repeating her words. She called out to her son, making it clear that they were leaving. I remained sitting, lost in thought and pondering the situation. Mary's revelation brought me a sense of relief, as I realized that my desire for revenge was just a consequence of my own bitterness over a failed marriage. This required careful consideration. I wondered how many other women from the gym he was involved with. It was time to collect concrete evidence. I couldn't help but notice his stamina, although it seemed that even the devil himself never gets tired. After finding out that he visits this place every day except on Mondays when the gym is closed, I remembered the phone number posted on the gym wall. Using the white pages of the phone book, I tracked this number to an address located just 3 blocks from our house. It became clear why this vile guy could easily walk to our house and enter into an illicit relationship with my future ex-wife. Informed Terry of his intention to take a walk every day around 4 p.m., citing his specialist's recommendation. Fortunately, this was a plausible excuse. Terry had no desire to go with me, knowing that it would not interfere with her secret meetings, so everything went without problems. During my first evening walk, I immediately went to Bounty's house and noticed that he lived in an apartment on the ground floor of an apartment building. Noticing his absence, I settled down nearby and waited for his arrival. As it seemed to me, he had to come around 5 o'clock, since he constantly disappeared from our house long before that. As expected, he entered his apartment a few minutes before 5. And this happened every day when I could go out for a walk, with the exception of the day of the meeting with the staff, which coincidentally fell on a day when I could not go. I suspected that he did this every time the gym was open. Curiosity was bothering me, and I reflected that every day he has another woman with whom he has fun. Deciding to get to the truth, I began to find out if he had other women. My daily walks gradually became earlier and earlier solely to observe his whereabouts and actions. In the end, I decided to take a whole week off and devoted it only to this investigation. Armed with the necessary tools, I quietly purchased a long-range listening device in an electronics store, which was not supposed to resemble a noticeable satellite dish. I purchased 5 full-color HD cameras with voice and motion activation. In addition, I purchased an additional portable hard drive to store all the digital evidence. Having purchased everything I needed on Monday, I started installing one of the cameras in Bounty's apartment. Fortunately, the apartment was not very large, but rather resembled a 2-room apartment with a spacious living room and a kitchen dining room. Setting up the camera so that it covered the entire space except for the bedroom was not difficult. I waited patiently until he left for the gym, giving me the perfect opportunity to get the keys to the apartment from their predictable hiding place under the rug. How cliché, I thought, unable to resist grinning at his lack of creativity. After making sure that the camera was working properly, I quickly left. From that moment on, every movement and sound in his apartment activated the camera and microphone, instantly transmitting video and sound to my computer. The footage, with date marks, was carefully preserved for later use. The system started working as soon as Bounty got home on Monday evening before going to bed around 9 o'clock. On Tuesday evening, great shots were taken of him enjoying a takeaway meal while sitting in front of the TV. Taking advantage of the fact that the gym was closed, I patiently waited until it was closed and got inside through the often unnoticed back door. Fortunately, luck was on my side. I installed the next camera in a secluded room at the back of the hall, where clients underwent an individual health assessment. This place was often used by Bounty for her intimate activities. Reflecting on my actions, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of person I had become to place cameras in other people's possessions and engage in invasive espionage. What could all this lead to? On Wednesday, I patiently waited until Terry left for groceries and quietly installed the 3rd and 4th cameras in our bedroom and living room. After reviewing the recordings made on Tuesday, I was shocked by what I saw and heard. Although I could not fully understand the context, Bounty woke up immediately and left the house to return later with breakfast. It annoyed me that lazy Bounty couldn't even make himself breakfast. He stayed at home until the gym opened and left at 9:30, but during his stay, he made an intriguing phone call. I heard him say, "Julie, hi, it's Phil. Has he left yet? Of course, then I'll see you at 12:30 at your house. Don't forget to wear the outfit I was talking about. Don't worry, I'll be careful when I come to you. Did you say he'd be gone for 3 days? Well, maybe I can come also on Thursday and Friday. Let's talk about it later today, my love." Having said that, he ended the conversation with noticeable ease. I wondered how he would explain his act to Terry. On Thursday, I went to the garage with a computer and waited patiently for the stormy events to begin. Almost immediately, a recording from Bounty's camera appeared on the screen. When he woke up, he went out for breakfast and then came back and called. He dialed Terry's number, and the camera recorded both sides of the conversation. "Hi, this is Phil. How are you doing?" Phil spoke flirtatiously, but Terry warned him not to talk like that on the phone because you never know who might be listening. Terry noted that I had already left for work, and they agreed to meet at the usual time at 12:30. Mary, a parent from school, is ready to help me. I asked her to compile a list of women with whom Bounty was involved or had a relationship. She got down to business with great enthusiasm and collected names and addresses in just a week. To my horror and disappointment, Terry's name was included in the list. By this time, I had almost torn myself away from our house. I hesitate to call it home because it has lost all sentimental meaning. Now it was just a house. Terry once mentioned that it seemed unusually empty lately. I casually explained that I was actively getting rid of my junk. She accepted my answer without caring about her own junk. In addition to the fact that she got an extra place to store her things from the garage were moved to my new home in order to completely vacate the room. It remained only to quickly, in 20 minutes, collect the remaining things and leave in my car. Before that, I had already sought the advice of a divorce lawyer, and all the necessary documents were carefully prepared and ready for transfer at any time. The financial issues were resolved, and I successfully transferred the entire amount spent on vacation to my personal bank account. To be fully prepared, I diligently kept all the receipts for imaginary purchases in a neat folder so that they could be easily found if necessary. I made significant changes to my financial arrangements. First, I updated the beneficiaries of my superannuation fund, specifying our children as recipients. In addition, I have withdrawn all available funds from the account. I've also taken steps to separate my personal finances, such as setting up individual accounts, credit cards, and insurance policies. To ensure the full transfer of ownership, I transferred Terry's car, including registration and insurance, exclusively to her name, placing all responsibility on her. Unfortunately, I had no authority over the house, so I had to rely on the court's decisions regarding its fate. In addition, I purchased a new mobile phone registered only in my name and made sure that its number was not included in the list. To ensure confidentiality in this regard, I gave up the old phone. I have put together a collection of gifts for every husband or partner associated with the women mentioned by Mary. Each package contained information about places where Bounty had intimate relations with their spouses. I also provided Bounty's personal details, such as his name and address, to address the issue of unprotected intimate contacts. Additionally, I included the address of a local intimate health clinic in the package. In addition, I took the initiative and sent a detailed letter to the owner of the gym, in which I advised him to have a serious talk with his chief instructor. Finally, I discreetly attached the divorce papers and several printed photos taken from CCTV cameras, which depicted Bounty and Terry on the kitchen table. I left a bundle with DVDs depicting intimate moments of her infidelities, as well as an engagement ring brutally sawed in half and smeared with feces. The note hidden underneath it all contained a clear message to Terry. "I am giving this shattered ring symbolizing the destruction you have brought to our marriage. If you want to communicate, then only through the lawyer listed in our divorce papers. I have taken all necessary measures to prohibit you from entering the school grounds, so please refrain from trying to contact me there. Causing a disturbance on school grounds will immediately lead to police intervention. Our children have been informed of your dirty infidelities in order to clarify the reason for our breakup and prevent false accusations." I took precautions and sent copies of the DVDs to the relevant parties. After that, I moved to a new place of residence, anticipating the inevitable consequences, and indeed they unfolded with great intensity. Surprisingly, local media reported about a scandal with a gym located nearby, which led to its closure and the departure of the owner from the city. Another incident, a former gym instructor was found in a gateway in the city center, who was allegedly attacked by an unknown group of men. The number of applications for divorce in the local court sharply increased, which caused a wave of houses for sale. On one of the fateful days, Terry returned home and was greeted with my parting gifts, which made her faint. Terrified by the scream, the neighbors saw Terry collapse to the floor. An observant elderly neighbor, a strong woman of about 70, did not immediately pay attention to the package accompanying her. Quickly understanding the reason for Terry's collapse, she once again confirmed her acute intuition. Before leaving the house, she made sure to call the rescue service, leaving the door ajar. Later, Terry tried to contact me. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't reach me on any of the available phones. Desperate to meet me, she decided to come to our school but was detained by the authorities. The overnight stay in the gatehouse and the strict warning of the justice of the peace significantly stopped her attempts. Our children, expressing their disapproval unconditionally, made it clear what they thought of a woman who so shamelessly betrays her spouse. Fortunately, both I and our children, unlike Terry, inherited more principled views on loyalty. In the end, the divorce was finalized and the remaining financial issues were resolved in the usual manner. As a result, Terry was forced to sell the house. After receiving the money, she was able to rent an apartment on the outskirts of the city, where she currently lives. She was ashamed to appear on the street and in society. She was recognized everywhere and poked at with a finger. Her identity was recognized, and every time she went out into the city, she was met with disapproving looks and whispered ridicule. The overwhelming despair of this rejection and humiliation eventually pushed her to go to a psychiatric clinic. It also turned out that Bounty infected many women, including Terry, with syphilis. She soon fell into a deep depression. Our children, just like me, did not want to communicate with their shameful mother. And I live in my small house. I can't forgive my cheating ex-wife. One morning I found myself contemplating the mess my life had become. Terry had not only betrayed my trust but also shattered the foundation of our marriage. Her infidelity with Bounty, a man she knew from the gym, had left me feeling empty and bitter. I had to move on, but it wasn't going to be easy. As the divorce proceedings continued, I focused on rebuilding my life. I invested time in my new house, turning it into a cozy home that reflected my tastes and preferences. I painted the walls in warm colors, bought new furniture, and filled the space with memories that didn't include Terry. My children visited occasionally, but the relationship was strained. They were caught in the middle of our broken marriage, and it was hard for them to understand why things had fallen apart. Terry, on the other hand, was struggling. The shame and humiliation of her actions had taken a toll on her. She lost many friends and faced constant judgment from the community. Her new apartment was small and lonely, a stark contrast to the home we had shared for years. Her depression deepened, and she found herself seeking professional help. It was painful to watch someone I had once loved deteriorate, but there was no turning back. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the routine and challenges it offered. My colleagues at the school were supportive, understanding that I was going through a tough time. The principal even granted me some additional time off to sort out my personal matters. During this period, I reconnected with old friends, people who had known me before Terry and I became a couple. They provided a much-needed support system, reminding me that life could still be good. One evening, I received a call from Mary Jones. She had been instrumental in helping me gather evidence against Bounty and Terry, and over the past few months, we had developed a bond. Mary had been through a similar ordeal with Bounty, and our shared experiences brought us closer. She invited me over for dinner, suggesting that we catch up and perhaps find some closure together. Mary lived in a modest house not too far from mine. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm smile and a hug. The dinner she had prepared was simple yet delicious, and we spent the evening talking about everything but our exes. It was refreshing to focus on the future rather than dwell on the past. As the night wore on, Mary and I found ourselves sharing more personal stories. She opened up about her struggles with trust and how difficult it had been to move on from Bounty's betrayal. I, in turn, shared my fears about starting over and the guilt I felt for how things had ended with Terry. It was a cathartic experience, and by the end of the evening I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Over the next few weeks, Mary and I continued to see each other. Our friendship blossomed into something more, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. She was kind, understanding, and shared my sense of humor. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy. Life was beginning to take on a new rhythm. My new relationship with Mary was progressing well, my work at the school was fulfilling, and I was finally able to look at my past with a sense of acceptance. Terry was no longer a constant presence in my thoughts, and I realized that I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger and resentment only held me back. The final steps of the divorce were completed smoothly. Terry and I agreed on the division of assets, and she kept the car and a small portion of our savings. The house was sold, and I used my share of the proceeds to invest in my new home and a future with Mary. It was a bittersweet moment, closing the chapter on a significant part of my life, but it was necessary for my healing. In the months that followed, Mary and I became inseparable. We took weekend trips, explored new hobbies, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. Our relationship was built on trust and mutual respect, something that had been missing in my marriage with Terry. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that made all the difference. Looking back, I realized that the journey through pain and betrayal had led me to a place of peace and happiness. I had learned to value myself and to seek out relationships that uplifted me. Terry's infidelity had been a devastating blow, but it had also set me on a path of self-discovery and growth. I often thought about Terry, hoping that she found some semblance of peace in her new life. Despite everything, I didn't wish her ill. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. We were both moving forward in our own ways. One evening, as Mary and I sat on the porch of our home, watching the sunset, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The past was behind me, and the future looked bright. Life had thrown me a curveball, but I had managed to catch it and throw it back, stronger than before. And that's the end of this incredible story. Discovering his wife's betrayal and navigating the aftermath was one of the hardest challenges he ever faced. Yet it led him to a new beginning, filled with self-discovery and new love. If you're facing a similar situation, remember that you're not alone, and there is hope for a brighter future. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Take care, and see you in the next video. Have you ever felt the cold sting of betrayal, the kind that turns your world upside down? I did, the day I discovered the infidelity that entwined my closest kin and deceit's embrace. My brother-in-law and wife are both traitors. My life, once a portrait of marital bliss with Emma, my high school sweetheart, turned into a canvas of heartache and retribution. From the innocent days of youthful love to the harsh moment of betrayal in a Providence hotel, this is my story. Hello, Mark. I'm Sam Bradley. Is Emma available? Mark disconnected the phone from my wife, so I didn't hear the click. Emma's constant ranting and hammering on my locked home office door filled the room. I waited for a couple of minutes before dialing Mark and Jessica's house phone. Listen, punk, if you call this number again, I will report you to the police. Do you understand? I do, Mark. I understand perfectly. However, you must comprehend two things. I do not care if you call the cops, and more significantly, I'm going to talk to your wife, and you can't do anything to stop me. Have a nice night. Despite the constant beating on the door, I felt satisfied hanging up on him this time. I leaned back in my office chair, closed my eyes, and attempted to make the final, critical choice of a long roller coaster day. Should I call my sister-in-law's husband? I asked myself. I met my wife, Emma, in high school. I was a junior sitting in the bleachers with my friends waiting for the commencement of a Friday night football game. An equally big group of sophomore girls sat in front of us. As the game proceeded, we took turns going to the concession stand. It was my turn to go. I discovered that a gorgeous blonde named Emma had joined me. We bought hot dogs, French fries, and sodas, and Emma and I ended up sitting together. She was pretty, smart, and had a nice sense of humor. And best of all, she had no boyfriend. During the middle of the third quarter, someone exclaimed, Are we going to McDonald's after the game? The girls and guys in our group were nearly unanimous in their decision to continue having fun at the adjacent McDonald's franchise. Deciding to take a gamble, I turned to Emma and said, "I'd rather have pizza than greasy fries. Would you like to visit Tony's Pizza?" I was ecstatic when she agreed. Emma and I dated on weekends for a few weeks and appeared to enjoy each other's company. We decided to go steady after 2 months of dating, and things only got better. Emma was my junior prom date, and I felt like I was walking on clouds as I accompanied the most gorgeous girl in our school to the dance. I was in heaven until I wasn't. 2 weeks later, on the Monday before the senior prom, I jogged to the tennis courts for team practice. I was jogging beside my neighbor, Lisa Burke. Lisa was on the girls' team. I was perplexed when Lisa said, "I think you're a really nice guy." "Lisa, we have known each other our entire lives," I said. "Why are you telling me now?" She punched my shoulder as we raced, saying, "It's great that you're letting Emma go to the senior prom with Jimmy Bates. Otherwise, he would never have had the opportunity to travel because he is so quiet and nerdy." Jimmy Bates was a kind person, but he was shy, nerdy, and probably on the spectrum. He was Emma's neighbor, and she constantly kept an eye out for him. I was not surprised when Emma consented to go to the prom, but I was disappointed that she didn't inform me. But on Friday afternoon, 6 other people praised me for my maturity. They felt it was fantastic that my steady girlfriend would be taken to the prom by her friend and neighbor. Truthfully, I did not feel mature. I was irritated that Emma didn't have the nerve to notify me about the senior prom. I figured she'd come clean on our usual Friday night rendezvous. She had no choice. At the last minute on Friday afternoon, I texted her to cancel. I was inundated with texts and voicemails asking me to call her. After a dozen chimes on my phone, I eventually texted Emma. "I have known about your prom date since Monday. At least 10 individuals told me. It's a shame you weren't one of them. I'm looking for a girlfriend I can trust. That is not you." I turned off my phone and sulked. Emma and I did not reconnect until the start of the following school year. It was Friday afternoon, and I was walking to my car in the student parking lot. Emma was sitting on the hood of my car when I approached. "Will you allow an old girlfriend to buy you ice cream at Dairy Queen?" she wanted to know. That was the beginning. We remained exclusive for the next 2 years. We had a long-distance romance throughout my sophomore year while I was attending college in Boston. I was able to be home a lot and was happy to lose my virginity on a Saturday night in March. Emma and I began dating shortly after her 18th birthday and continued until the following year when she left for college. About 2 weeks after the start of her freshman year, I received a letter from Emma. She seemed to be having too much fun in college and didn't want to be stuck with a full-time boyfriend. I never called or wrote. I was popular, excelled academically, and competed in Division III tennis. I replaced Emma with a regular stream of girls beginning the next night. I did not see Emma again until 2 years after she graduated from college. I was working as a staff engineer for a local defense firm and went out with some coworkers after a difficult week. I unexpectedly ran into her at the bar. We talked for a few minutes before returning to our own groups of friends. I'll admit that I kept an eye on her for the next hour, unsure whether I should follow her to the parking lot when her group dispersed. I laughed when Emma's pals left. She approached the bar, perched on a stool, and ordered a drink. When she was served, she swiveled her chair to face me and stared at the table. I watched her with a foolish grin as a slew of guys approached her, only to be promptly turned down. I only excused myself from my buddies after she looked me in the eye and held up 2 fingers. I had to wait for Emma to tell another guy to get lost before I could stand next to her. I asked, and Emma grinned and replied, "Yep, if you had let 2 more guys ask me out, I would have accepted his invitation." Emma and I dated for over 6 months before becoming exclusive and moving in together. We married 10 months later and had a joyful and fulfilling life for over 5 years. My day began early. I had a 7:30 a.m. meeting with a longtime customer and friend. We were meeting in the downtown Marriott in Providence, Rhode Island, home of a spectacularly overrated university. Tony was already seated in the meeting room I had arranged. We talked for a few minutes as I set up my laptop, laid down all the necessary documentation, and filled a mug with boiling hot black coffee. Tony is a civilian contractor who has been assigned by his employer to work on the U.S. Navy's next-generation submarine propulsion systems. I am a senior mechanical engineer. My company is a defense contractor specializing in marine mechanics. Over the previous few years, we had successfully collaborated on 3 modest but significant contracts. For whatever reason, we were all receiving opposition from our direct supervisors regarding our present negotiations. We were told that we had one more chance to resolve the 7 crucial issues before others from our respective companies took over the negotiations. Tony and I worked straight through lunch before taking a deep breath at 2:15 p.m. "Do you believe your company will accept it this time?" Tony asked. I shrugged and told him honestly that I didn't understand why our last 2 bids were rejected. Tony wondered, "You and I have become closer over the last few years. Do you believe it could be a test to see whether we are too close?" I grinned and confessed that I had thought the same thing before stretching and shrugging again. "What about a drink?" Tony asked. I put up my notepad and stated, "I have over 30 pages of notes to figure out. A drink won't make things any easier. I'm going to hang out and transcribe the relevant resolutions to my laptop. I'll email you a memo of understanding by 9 a.m. tomorrow. If there are any misunderstandings, let's call immediately. I need to submit my report before noon tomorrow." "That sounds great," Tony spoke as he began to pack away his computer. I took Tony into the hotel lobby, and after he departed, I went to the gift shop and purchased a Diet Coke before going to the conference room. As soon as I came in, I felt like the walls were closing in on me, so I decided to move locations. I packed my luggage and moved to a quiet nook of the hotel foyer. I checked in with the office and discovered that some minor issues had arisen during the course of the morning. After texting my wife and suggesting she enjoy dinner without me, I sat down in the comfy lobby chair and went to work. The change in location was beneficial, and I was able to complete a significant amount of work over the next few hours. I was so engaged that I was shocked when her laugh captured my attention. I looked up and saw Lisa, my sister-in-law, strolling across the hotel lobby in a typical little black dress and stunning heels. She was heading directly toward the check-in area. If that wasn't bizarre enough, her arm was wrapped around the arm of a tall, attractive man. The man was not Lisa's husband, Greg. Without thinking, I used my phone's camera app and captured numerous photos of the pair as they checked in. One image made me steam as the man's hand lowered and squeezed her buttocks. I snapped another set of photos as they walked to the elevator, followed by a final set as they boarded the elevator. They kissed as the elevator door closed. I swiftly hurried over and noticed that the indicator light indicated that they had gotten out on the 9th floor. I was angry and perplexed. I adore Lisa, and her husband is my best friend. I'll admit it, I was dazed. When I sat back in my seat between the day's strenuous negotiations and the surprise of finding Lisa with another man, my brain was fried. I didn't notice the man sitting in the chair beside me until he extended his open hand. He said, "Hello, my name is James, and I am the general manager of the Marriott." As we shook hands, I responded, "Hello, James. I'm Sam Bradley. I reserved conference room L222 today." James nodded in understanding before asking, "I observed you photographing the couple that had just checked in. Do you know them?" After a moment, I responded, "I know the woman." "Can I assume you were startled to see her with her gentleman friend?" "I was quite startled," I informed James. "Mr. Bradley, can I be blunt?" After I nodded, he went on to say, "I'm worried there will be trouble if you stay here." "I've never been into the kind of difficulty you're describing. I have never come close. There is sure to be a confrontation, but I'll go before we disturb your visitors." James gazed around the lobby. It was fairly quiet and no one seemed to notice us. He handed me a folded sheet of paper, and as I unfolded it to reveal a man's name and address, James inquired, "Do you think there will be even less of a confrontation now that you have that information?" I extended my hand, and as we shook, I said, "I can almost guarantee it." I returned to work and accomplished a surprising lot. despite the fact that I peered up at the elevator bank every few seconds. It was approximately 3 hours later when Lisa and her partner got out of the elevator. My luggage was packed, and I was on my feet approaching them before they could take 2 steps into the lobby. As I approached the pair, I held my cell phone in my face and took pictures. Lisa seemed perplexed at first, but when I lowered the camera, her jaw dropped open and she got pale. "I'd give you a kiss as I always do, but I don't want to taste your boyfriend on your lips." "Sam, what the hell are you doing here?" "I am here for meetings. Why are you here?" I could see Lisa trying to calm herself down. She paused and said, "Sam, I'd like you to meet my charm. We work together. We're here to look into meeting rooms for an upcoming event that our agency is holding." I gazed at Mike as he extended his hand toward me. "Nice to meet you, Sam." I ignored his hand and inquired, "Mike, is it? May I ask you a question?" Mike and Lisa exchanged tense looks before I asked, "Do you think Lisa looks better dressed in these sexy, hip-hugging jeans, skin-tight blouse, and boots?" I waved my hand to indicate Lisa's present outfit. "Or the gorgeous black dress when you visited the 9th floor to view meeting rooms?" I gazed down at Mike's left hand. "3 hours ago, before you had regained consciousness, Mike, you had a nice wedding band, and at that point, I regarded you as a lying, cheating pile of trash just like my lovely sister-in-law." Mike lost his composure and hissed, "Listen, you don't know what's going on. Just keep your mouth shut, and I will not kick your butt." "I'm sorry to tell you, Mike, but my sister-in-law's affair with a useless hole like you is my business. I carefully put both arms behind my back. Kick my butt? I'll offer you a free first shot. You better make it count, because when you take your shot, I'm going to beat the out of you, put you in the hospital, and then contact the cops to press charges against you." I shut up and grinned. Mike jerked his head at Lisa and aggressively asked, "Can you handle this a-hole? I need to go." Without waiting for a response, he stormed out of the hotel through the front door. I couldn't help it. As Mike approached the hotel's front door, I added, "If I were you, I would warn your wife." Mike paused and slowly turned to face Lisa. He emphasized, "Please take care of this." Lisa turned pale, placed her hand on my arm, and murmured, "Sam, may we walk into the bar and get a drink?" I was tempted, but ultimately decided against it. "I apologize, Lisa. I wasted several hours waiting for you to finish your sex party." Lisa cringed as I proceeded. "I need to get home, have a drink, and decide how to approach telling Greg and Mike's wife." Lisa clutched my arm and begged, "I only do this while Greg is away. It means nothing. I'm not trying to hurt Greg." "Lisa, how long have you known me?" She did not respond, but she looked deeply into my eyes. "I suppose it's been at least a dozen years since I first dated Emma in high school. Does this seem about right?" After allowing the stillness to grow, I angrily told Lisa, "And what would you have concluded after all of that? I will not inform my best friend his wife is a liar and a cheater." As I turned to go, I caught the eye of James, the hotel's manager. He gave me a grateful nod as I went through the main revolving door. The rush hour traffic was gone as I began the half-hour drive north on Interstate 95. I was able to set the cruise control to 78 miles per hour and turn up the volume on the country music channel as I drove home. The only irritation during the trip was my cell phone's incessant dings and ringing. My wife appears to have been trying to contact me urgently. I drove into our garage and closed the door behind me. After getting out of the car, I heard my wife, Emma. She was standing in the open doorway that connects our garage to the condo's kitchen. "Where the hell have you been?" she wanted to know. I slid past her and proceeded into the kitchen. After tossing my work supplies on the counter, I spotted Emma's cell phone laying on the kitchen table next to a half-full glass of wine. I took her phone, pressed the keyboard to enter her password, and opened her text messages. I could see that the SMS message I sent several hours earlier had been read. "So?" I asked. "Do you know where I've been? You have read the message. That's not what I intended. You are already aware of this." As I proceeded to the den to pour a couple of fingers of bourbon, I asked over my shoulder, "Then tell me what you mean." When I returned to the kitchen, Emma was seated at the table. She said, "What did you do to upset Lisa?" "As far as I know, I have not done anything to bother Lisa. Lisa, on the other hand, has deeply upset me. I sat across from Emma and watched her assemble her thoughts. Did you know Lisa was cheating on Greg? My blunt inquiry took her by surprise. It happened only once, she said. Well, that is a lie, I told Emma. Lisa informed me that she only cheats while Greg is on the road. After a brief break, I resumed. I saw that you did not answer my inquiry. Did you know your sister cheated on Greg? Emma groaned, took a sip of wine, and remarked, "This is between Greg and Lisa." I grinned and informed Emma, "That is the first thing you have said that I agree with. It's between Greg and Lisa. My issue is that Greg is unaware that there is a situation that requires immediate attention." "Damn it! It is none of your concern," Emma erupted. "I want you to keep your mouth closed." I leaned forward and put my elbows on the kitchen table. Having folded the fingers of both hands together in prayer, I said, "You know me, Emma. You know me better than anyone else." Emma had expected more and was surprised when I stood up and hurried quickly to the kitchen archway. I paused for a moment before turning. I asked, "You twice if you had heard about Lisa cheating and you refused to respond. I will ask again. How long have you known? Do you know Lisa? She has always been a touch crazy." April 3rd was my immediate answer. What the hell does that mean? It simply means you refuse to answer a question that I believe is crucial to our marriage. What Lisa does when Greg is abroad has no influence on our marriage, Emma stated confidently. Okay, let's see. I leaned against the arch and counted on my fingers. First off, my connection with your sister will never be the same. I now know she is a liar. That includes every holiday that we celebrate with your family. I will be reminded of your sister's deceit. Second, you've given me every piece of evidence that you were aware of her terrible actions, and I'm left wondering if you approve. That is not fair, Sam. Third, while I don't travel as often as Greg, I'm taking one vacation every month for the first time in our relationship. I had to worry about whether you cheated on me. Emma's eyes grew large, and she exploded. "How can you accuse me of cheating?" I instantly jumped in and answered with the same intensity. "I've never accused you of cheating, but your casual attitude toward your sister's misbehavior makes me wonder if you have." I paused and looked at my wife before continuing. "You and I both understand that you cannot prove you have not cheated. I just have trust in you, and right now, that trust is seriously undermined." I turned and strolled down the hall to my home office. After conducting an internet search on Mike Charm, which revealed that he was married and had both calls to his house intercepted, I resolved to undertake the last dreaded task. I texted my brother-in-law, Greg. "You're returning home on Friday, am I correct?" It took him 10 minutes to answer. "Yes, I land at 2:30 p.m. Meet me at the pit stop. I'll be there at 4. Is this related to Lisa's panic phone call wanting to know if we've talked?" Greg wanted to know. My phone rang while I was trying to decide how to reply. I responded, "Hello, Greg." I wasn't trying to hide my statements from Emma when I swiveled my chair to face the wall, but I also wasn't going to make it easy for her to hear them through the closed and locked door. "What is going on, Sam?" "Greg, this is about as terrible as it gets. Are you sure you want to do this by phone?" After a brief pause, Greg inquired, "Is she cheating on me?" I said, "Yes." The stillness lasted several minutes, punctuated by an occasional sob. "I will see you at the pit stop," he said. The call was terminated instantly. I was going to text Greg and tell him I was willing to talk whenever he wanted, but I ultimately chose to leave my pal alone. I felt certain that he knew I had his back and was accessible whenever he needed me. Emma had quieted down while I was speaking with Greg. I am sure she was trying to listen. After hanging up, I heard her say, "Please come to the kitchen." Through the closed door, "We need to talk." I was about to walk to our guest bedroom, but instead decided to finish the bourbon at the kitchen table. After settling onto a kitchen chair across from Emma, I took a good swallow of Knob Creek and enjoyed the mild burn in my throat. I looked across at my wife and saw the wheels feverishly churning in her head, preparing for her next attack. My brain had died. I didn't have much fight left in me, and I knew the final ounce of alcohol wouldn't help. I was waiting for Emma to start when my phone vibrated in my pocket. Jesus, I exploded. When will the day end? I doubted the phone was out. I looked at the screen and saw a number I didn't recognize, which contributed to my already high frustration. I answered the phone with an assertive, "Hello." The woman answered, "I'm sorry to call so late. My name is Colleen. Someone from this number called my home twice tonight. These calls have my husband very concerned, and I believe the caller was trying to contact me." "My name is Sam Bradley. I called earlier and tried to contact you," I replied in a melancholy tone. Colleen said, "I assume you were calling to inform me that my husband is cheating with your wife." I informed her that he was cheating with my sister-in-law. Her name is Lisa Palmer, and I believe they work together. There was a long delay before she replied. "This is the third time I have received a similar call, and it will be the last. How does a man do this to his wife and 4 children?" I knew the question was rhetorical, so I volunteered, "I have photos of them checking in at the downtown Providence Marriott, kissing in the elevator as the door closed, and returning to the lobby." Lisa's outfit had changed nearly 3 hours after the date. The rest of the call was spent exchanging email addresses and promising to send the images in the morning. Hanging up the phone, Emma stated, "Lisa told me they have an open marriage." "That's a lie. His wife and 4 children believe they are in a monogamous marriage with loving housemates." Emma held her palms up to her face, shocked. I continued, "Apparently this is the third time she has found him cheating. She is planning to divorce him." Emma was surprised as she looked at me. I swirled the remainder of my bourbon around in the glass before swallowing the last sip. After rinsing the glass in the sink, I went up to our bedroom and lay in bed thinking about all that had happened to my extended family in the previous few hours. I came to the realization that I was not to blame for all of the grief and damage. As usual, my alarm went off at 5 a.m. Instead of starting the day working out in our basement gym, I immediately got dressed and went to work. I was not attempting to get away from Emma. I needed to get into the office, complete the memo of understanding, and send it to Tony. Thursday was a busy day. Tony and I had to talk on the phone for 45 minutes to get the language absolutely right on a handful of topics, but I was easily able to deliver the full agreement to my boss before the noon deadline. I spent the afternoon catching up on emails from the previous day before heading home around 5 p.m., my normal quitting time. I had been wondering what the evening would bring, so I was only half shocked when I came onto our street and saw Lisa's and her parents' cars parked in front of our house. "It's going to be a very long night," I grimaced as I pushed the button to open the garage door. "What the hell were you saying to Greg?" Lisa fired the opening salvo as I closed the door behind me. Looking at my terrified wife, I claimed, "I was going to change. I will be back in a few minutes, but I warn you, if your family disrespects me in my home, I will physically toss them out the front door. This includes you, Emma." I didn't wait for a response before rushing down the hall to our bedroom. After debating the coward's way out and climbing out the bedroom window, I decided to confront Emma and her family. It was difficult to pass by my open bottle of bourbon, but I figured it was best to keep a clear head. My second thought was screw it, so I returned to the bar. 1 inch did not seem to be enough, and 2 inches was too much for polite conversation, so I settled on 1.5 inches of my favorite amber liquid. When I walked back into the kitchen, everyone was staring at me. Everyone was seated at the table. There was a vacant seat between Emma and her father, Steve. Instead of sitting, I leaned against the kitchen counter, observed the gathering, and wet my lips with my drink. I liked my in-laws. They were decent, reliable folks. Steve, my father-in-law, was someone I admired. He was direct and honest, and you were always aware of his feelings toward you. If you stayed on his good side, you couldn't have a better buddy in the world. If, on the other hand, you crossed him, I was convinced that he could make your life miserable. Steve saw Greg and me as pals. My mother-in-law considered herself a wheeler-dealer and businesswoman extraordinaire. She owned and operated a well-known local real estate franchise that had an excellent reputation. While Betty supervised the day-to-day operations, everyone knew Steve was the driving force behind the company's success. "Wouldn't it be more pleasant to sit here?" Emma patted the chair beside her. "I have been sitting all day. I'm fine where I am." Lisa had more emotional control. She questioned, "What did you tell Greg?" I paused for a second before responding. "I texted him and asked to meet when he arrived home tomorrow. I told him it was urgent." After gathering my thoughts, I continued, "Greg called and asked what was wrong. After confirming that he wanted to talk on the phone, I informed him that you were cheating on him. He cried for a few minutes before confirming his plans to meet with me." I was astonished by how upset the family appeared to be. Emma was crying and said, "I beg you to mind your own business." I was curious if her statement was for her family's advantage. I responded, "Telling Greg was my business." My mother-in-law chimed in, saying, "That is debatable." Lisa inquired before I could respond, "Do you plan to meet Greg tomorrow?" "I am." "What are you planning to tell him?" she wanted to know. I responded, "I don't have anything else to tell him. I saw you in the photos I took and informed him that you were with Mike for about 3 hours. I supplied him with Mike's name and address, as well as his wife's contact information. I'm guessing I'll be a support and a shoulder to weep on." "How about me, Sam?" Lisa wanted to know. "Don't I also deserve support?" I truly smiled as I looked around the table. "Lisa, it appears that you are well supported. You'll go with Greg on this one." "How do you ensure Greg does not cheat on Lisa while he travels?" Betty observed. "Married men often stray when they're away from home," the girl's mother added. "However, I cannot fathom Greg cheating. If I'm honest, I have no idea how he behaves when he's away. Until yesterday, I never suspected Lisa was a cheater. Or maybe my wife is cheating on me." The table exploded with, "How dare you, and that is uncalled for." Emma was definitely stunned by my statement, so I jumped in and proceeded, "At least I was honest with Emma last night. Her casual and dismissive attitude toward Lisa's adultery makes me apprehensive. Steve, the girl's father, informed me that Emma has never cheated on you. I can't believe you think so negatively of her." I realized I needed to be careful with my next few words. I did not want to turn Steve against me. I purposefully turned down the intensity and severity of my voice, looked Steve in the eye, and challenged, "Prove it." After a few moments of silence, I resumed, "That's it, Steve. You cannot establish that Emma did not cheat on me." I raised my hand when the protest began. "All I have is 6 years of complete trust in Emma. Last night I told her that my trust in her had been shattered." "That is not fair, Sam." I got in before Emma had finished. "I asked you 3 times last night if you knew Lisa had cheated on Greg. You refused to answer my query. Instead, you changed the topic. You did not lie, but you were dishonest." Emma looked at Mary, who admitted, "I knew about Lisa's affairs. I have not backed her, but I did not intend to make a mess like this." She waved her hands to indicate our current concerns. "I had hoped that her affairs would run their course without Greg finding out." I nodded. However, I was deeply unhappy that Emma concealed her sister's infidelity. I could understand why she was protecting her sister. "Do you remember our conversation about being exclusive a few weeks before you proposed to me?" Emma inquired. As I nodded, she looked me firmly in the eyes and stated, "I promise I haven't had a romantic or intimate relationship since our conversation. In fact, I have not been with another man since we began dating after college. Call me naive, but I saw the angel I married 5 years ago when she delivered those words. 'I love you and believe in you,' I told my bride." Her family was courteous enough to wait a few moments before we resumed our talk. Steve seemed particularly pleased with the course of events. Then he inquired, "What are you going to do with Greg?" "I'm just going to support my best friend, just as each of you will support Lisa. Greg deserves my support, and I will offer it to him." The next 6 weeks were a struggle. Greg relocated from his house to a nearby apartment. He promptly filed for an official separation from Lisa, but did not file for divorce. I had supper with Greg every Wednesday, although Emma followed the same schedule as her sister. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was eating lunch with a couple of co-workers at Clyde's Barbecue and Bar. We were seated at a table for 4 when a man pulled out an empty chair and sat across from me. Hey, I bet you've forgotten about me, he said. It took a few beats before I was able to identify the face. Hello, Mike. I heard Colleen had dumped you. How does it feel to be an absent father? He snarled and replied, Screw you. It's your fault. I noticed my friends, Carl and Joe, were moderately amused. I returned my focus to Mike and responded, Yeah, your divorce is my fault. Mike grinned and confessed, I guess that was also partly my fault, but with so many married women around, it's impossible for me to be faithful. When Mike continued, I became increasingly concerned about his response. It appears that I am a sex addict, and my kink is a married woman. I enjoy hooking them on my flesh and sharing it with my friends. Mike bombed Carl to the right. That is what I did with Lisa, his sister-in-law. After her husband left town, I transformed her into my own personal sex doll, which I shared and exchanged with my pals. He winked and informed me, She was really popular and we used her for more than a year. She enjoyed every moment with me and my companions. I was about to ditch her when I ran into her and her attractive younger sister at a happy hour. His smirk left no doubt about the rest of the exchange, which involved reaching inside his back pocket. He brought out an envelope and threw it on the table next to my plate. It was the kind of envelope that contained photographs. Mike's smirk explained everything I needed to know about the material. I'll admit that my heart was shattered into 1,000 pieces, but I'd be damned if I let the world see me falter. I scooped up the envelope and shoved it into my sports coat pocket. Trying to whet my appetite? Mike remarked. Aren't you going to show this to your friends? I bet they'd love to see pictures and videos of your wife and her sister having sex with my guys. I've been sleeping with her for over 5 months now. As crazy and horny as Lisa is, your wife is 10 times wilder. Mike continued with a laugh. I have video of her under knees begging me to do things to her that you can't. She enjoys being used as a sex doll. He laughed again. What's the matter, a-hole? Do you have nothing to say? I was gritting my teeth but had to answer. I said, You must be the stupidest scumbag on the planet. When I told him, his smirk remained ear to ear. When I delivered Lisa's husband, Greg, those photos, he announced that he was going to file for divorce. Since you are Lisa's direct supervisor, how long do you think it will take to sue you or your company? You will be out of work in a week. It was hard, but I started giggling. He realized he had underestimated me and was planning his next move. I asked, Did you know I grew up in this town? Why should I care where you grew up? The a-hole was in for a world of pain, but I would take my time. I know all of the town's movers and shakers. Mike didn't seem impressed, so I proceeded. I also know some of the worst people. I would like to propose that you depart town while your legs are still functioning. Screw you. I'm not terrified of you. I have witnesses who say you threaten me. He indicated Carl and Joe. They both laughed, and Joe admitted he was indeed an idiot. You are getting divorced and losing your children. You are going to be dismissed from your job while repaying alimony and child support. Best of all, I would encourage you to start glancing over your shoulder shortly. Someday, you will find yourself in a world of pain. Mike smugly shoved his chair back, stood up, and muttered, Screw you, a-hole. You're nothing but a cuck with a scum-sucker for a spouse. My thoughts were racing as Mike walked away. Later, back in my office, I examined the photographs and confirmed the most disgusting details imaginable for a happily married man. There were some explicit photos of Emma with 6 different males. She was surrounded by 3 men and 1 woman. Lisa was captured in a second set of photos doing the same actions. The video was even worse. It crushed my spirit. Emma and Lisa enjoyed being the center of a series of bizarre orgies that I will never forget. After gathering my thoughts and putting aside my enormous sadness and fury, I called Greg and invited him to join me for supper. After another 15 minutes of looking into space, I invited another individual to join Greg and me. I had tears in my eyes as I sat at my desk outlining my ideas. I knew I'd be unable to act normally with Emma. I needed to get away. I travel for my company virtually every month. Half of my excursions were scheduled in advance. The other excursions were urgent and at the last minute. I texted Emma, Whitaker's account is in peril. I am on my way to the airport. Greg and I ate a peaceful supper that night. After ordering drinks, I handed him the small stack of photos that Mike had given me earlier that day. Greg was equally devastated for himself and for me. We decided that divorce was the only viable choice for us, and we contemplated suing the insurance company that employed Lisa and Mike. Finally, we decided to accept the counsel of our divorce attorney. We've been sitting at our table for more than an hour when I saw Esme enter the bar. He searched the room, noticed me, and made his way over. He paused to shake hands and say a few things to people at other tables. Esme is older than Greg and me. His daughter Trish attended our school system 1 year after me. Esme had a large car salvage yard just outside town. 15 years ago, when I was 16, I was practicing my serve on the high school tennis courts. Trish waved to me one summer day as she rode her bike by the courts. A few minutes later, as I was retrieving the dispersed balls on the court, I looked up and saw 5 classmates shoving Trish behind the baseball field bleachers approximately 100 yards away. I had a pretty clear notion of what the hooligans were thinking, and Trish was not the type of gal. I ran from the courts and ended up under the bleachers a brief few seconds later. Trish's t-shirt had been yanked off. She was screaming, crying, and attempting to protect herself as they tugged on her shorts. Stan Malloy turned barely in time for the rim of my racket to hit his nose. It burst, blood poured everywhere, and Stan let out a blood-curdling scream as he fell to the ground. My backhand landed squarely on Joey Burns' cheek, knocking him out. I can't recall much after that. The 3 remaining hooligans tackled me and kicked the living hell out of me while I was down. After the final few kicks, they were afraid and fled. Trish continued to weep as I attempted to regain my bearings. We left Trish's bike in the field and she assisted me to my car. I was scarcely able to drive, but I eventually arrived in front of her house. My car had not fully stopped before Trish hopped out of the front seat and rushed crying into her house. I had to exit the vehicle and circle it to close the door. Trish left the door open. While I closed it, I heard a crash and turned toward the house. A massive bull of a man was charging for me. His visage appeared ready to kill. When he got close, he observed the damage to my face and my hunched-over posture. "You are Bradley's kid," he growled at me. I could scarcely nod. I informed him, "Mr. Mel, I think I need an ambulance." I leaned against the automobile, lowering myself slowly and painfully to the ground. Mr. Mel turned and roared toward the house. "Call an ambulance, do it now!" Mr. Mel kneeled next to me, held my chin in his palm, and moved my head so we could meet eyes. "What in the hell happened to my daughter?" he wanted to know. "What hooligans pulled her beneath the baseball field bleachers? Was this you?" he barked. I grumbled and shook my head. I was practicing on the tennis court next to the field. Every syllable was awful. He had fury in his eyes as he said, "What did those hooligans do to her?" He was unable to complete the phrase. When I arrived, they had taken her shirt off. They were trying to take her pants off. She was still in her bra and shorts. If I hadn't been in so much pain, I'm sure his frigid glare would have terrified me. "I want to know their names. Stan Malloy and Joey Burns will be at the hospital when I arrive. I smashed their faces with my racket." I informed him of the names of the other 3 as an ambulance and a police car approached my car. Mr. Mel leaned in so that we were nose to nose. I could smell garlic on his breath. He continued in a voice just above a whisper, "If you ever need a favor, come see Esme Morel." Esme sat at our table without being introduced. I handed him the photo envelope and waited a moment while he looked through it. When he looked up at me, I added, "There is a man named Michael Schmidt. He's a top employee at Jimmy Sullivan's insurance office. His hobby is to capture married women for his own enjoyment and then share them with his pals. The photos I showed you featured him in his group with my wife and my brother-in-law's wife." Esme nodded, indicating his understanding as I continued, "I'm hoping that someday he won't be as attractive. His walk will be much less athletic, and he will have difficulty achieving interaction." The 3 of us sat quietly for a few minutes until Esme said his sole words. "You'll both be single shortly. It could be wise to join a gym. You can decide to work directly from the gym. Every night, you can work out together for a few hours and then go out for supper. Before ending, he took a close look at our perplexed expressions. Do you idiots believe you can have airtight alibis every night? When he realized that we understood what he was saying, he rolled his eyes, nodded at me, stood up, and strolled slowly out of the pub. I did not go home as I had informed Emma. The first was outside of town. Instead, I stayed at a neighboring Marriott for the night. I was able to speak directly with my supervisor and give him a short version of my problems. He agreed to let me work remotely and notify my team that I would be gone the following week via email. The uncomfortable recliner in the corner of the motel room called to me. I fell into the chair, closed my eyes, and thought about the preceding weeks. Emma was obviously unable to reveal her romance with Mike and his buddies because of the hard position I had taken with her sister. She knew for certain that I would divorce her. Emma was correct, but as I considered the divorce equation, I believed I would have been fair if she had been honest and open. Instead, Emma kept lying to me. I had to find out about her deceit in front of my friends and co-workers. I can't imagine anything more demeaning and embarrassing than sitting in front of your wife's pimp and realizing she enjoys orgies. She had been quite unjust to me, and as a result, our divorce would not have been fair. Instead, I realized I needed to crush Emma. I pledged to myself that I would ruin my wife, love, and best friend in an equally brutal manner. Emma's divorce would not be amicable. I struggled out of the recliner, strolled to the hotel room's corner office desk, and made my plans. It took until about 1:30 a.m. to plan my pre-divorce approach for my dishonest, unfaithful wife. If my strategy failed, she would be devastated. On the other hand, if everything went as planned, she'd end up shattered and in a heap on the curb. The next morning, I was able to set up an appointment with a divorce attorney for the following day. Despite the attorney's advice, I did not proceed to separate our finances. This would have to wait. I moved into an extended stay motel and established a remote office. I ignored Emma's calls and texts until Friday. At that moment, I just texted her that I would be out for the weekend. Her reaction was quite emotional, and she called all weekend pleading with me to call her back. I was able to buy everything I needed to complete my plan. After finishing my checklist, I headed to the mountains for a lengthy hike. On Sunday, when I returned to the hotel, I checked my phone and saw texts and calls from Emma, all of her family members, plus a few co-workers. Emma was apparently very upset that I had gone missing and she was attempting to locate me. On Monday and Tuesday, I worked from a motel room. I tried to wrap up all loose ends because I would be out of the office the next day. Wednesday was the day. I checked out of the motel after breakfast and returned home. On the way, I checked Emma's employer's parking lot to ensure her car was at work. I also placed a GPS gadget below her seat. It took a few hours to set up the necessary equipment and props at home, but I was done by 2 p.m. I kindled a fire in the living room fireplace. Emma and I used to love a nice fire on a Saturday night. We'd drink wine, speak and snuggle while watching the flames jump around the fireplace. However, today was not a frigid February day. It was September, and the temperature outside was 84 degrees F in the early afternoon. I waited until 3 p.m. and texted Emma. Just got home. My phone rang quickly. I let Emma's call go to voicemail, but she didn't leave any messages. Instead, she sent me a message. I kept an eye on my laptop's GPS indication. I expected Emma to leave work right away, but she didn't. She was about to show me the fire. At 5:05 p.m., I was still adding logs to the top of the pile when the GPS indicated that Emma had begun her journey home. The temperature in the living area was easily more than 100 VDGF perfect, I believed. My heart had hardened. I clenched my teeth as I waited for her to come home. Emma waited 3 minutes after opening the garage door to enter the kitchen. I heard her drop her briefcase beside the entrance and felt her presence as she stood in the living room entryway. She stepped in and found me sitting on the couch watching the fire. A cheese and cracker dish and a bottle of wine sat on the table in front of the couch. I was holding a single glass of wine. A second glass was at the other end of the table, reserved for Emma. "What the hell are you doing?" Emma commented. "The heat is overwhelming." As I turned away from the fire to gaze at her, I asked, "What the hell do I look like doing? I had planned a lovely welcome for my wife." I observed 2 droplets of sweat running down her forehead and cheek. "A romantic." The word stopped in her throat, and she did not complete the sentence. Instead, she moved a few steps closer to the fire, bent down, and picked up a half-buried item from the stone. She held it up and carefully examined it before taking a step back and glancing at the top level of the bookcase. I worried she might damage her back. She moved so rapidly to face me. Her eyes widened with dread as she showed me the scorched front cover of a book. It was the only part of the book that survived the fire. Emma did not appear to be in any condition to speak, so I calmly informed her, "We didn't have any kindling to start the fire, so I used a few of those old books." I nodded toward the empty space on the top shelf where Emma maintained a full row of books. "I just used around 4 or 5. We have plenty more to ignite the next fire." While we were conversing, I got up from the couch and retrieved Emma's glass of wine, which I held out to her. I watched her expression change from confusion to fury. Emma's father presented her with a gift on her birthday, the previous year's most popular children's book. On the first blank page, her father wrote Emma a heartfelt love letter outlining his aspirations and dreams for his daughter. Her father gave her the same birthday present every year. She had 28 novels, each as a reminder of her father's affection. I tightened my jaw when I saw Emma scream and begin to swing. I'm not sure if she meant to slap or strike me, but when her hand touched my face, it ached like hell. Her palm smashed into my left eye, and her fingernails punctured the skin on my cheek. The contents of the 2 glasses of wine stained the front of my shirt and slacks. Her expression changed again, and as she began to cry, I could see complete confusion. Without saying anything, she turned and dashed up the stairs to our second-story bedroom. I heard the door slam behind her. Despite the fact that I knew my marriage was over, I smiled. My strategy had worked well. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, I noticed my eye was red and swelling. Emma's nails had broken the skin, and a small amount of blood streamed down my cheek. "Let's get this over with," I murmured to myself as I took my cell phone from my pocket and dialed 911. "What is your emergency?" I heard from the other end. "My name is Sam Bradley, and I require police assistance with a domestic issue," I replied. After giving the operator my address, she inquired, "Mr. Bradley, are you in a safe place?" "I am. My wife has locked herself inside our bedroom. I'll be sitting on the front porch until the police arrive." "Do you need medical attention?" the dispatcher asked. "No, I did not sustain serious injuries," I replied. According to police policy, the dispatcher remained on the line until the first police car arrived. I was aware that my call was being recorded, and I took great care in responding to her queries. A second patrol car arrived almost immediately after the first one had stopped at the curb. 3 police officers walked over the lawn together. "Thank you for coming, officers." "What's happening?" the grizzled old veteran inquired. I turned my head so they could clearly observe the injury on my left side. "My wife Emma hit me." "Why did she hit you?" he wanted to know. I wanted to be careful with my response. I informed him that my wife had grown verbally abusive during the last few months. "I suppose she has been conflicted. She's been concealing an affair that she doesn't believe I know about. In fact, I prepared to serve her with divorce papers tonight." "When we discuss this with your wife, will we find any damage?" "I have never touched my wife or any other lady in anger," was my honest response. One of the younger cops inquired, "Do you have any guns in your home?" "I own numerous handguns. They're all kept in a gun safe in my workplace. My wife does not know the combination for the safe." The 2 younger officers entered my residence to speak with Emma. I spoke to the third. "Do you want to watch a video of my wife slapping me?" He squinted, attempting to make sense of my sentence. It took a few beats before he asked, "Do you have proof of the nod?" I looked at it. "I believe I have proof." As I finished, I motioned for him to follow me. My laptop was on the kitchen countertop. I needed to boot up the computer and locate the cloud-based storage account. I opened the folder, backed up the video for 30 minutes, and discovered the beginning of our confrontation. I hit play and walked back to allow the police officer to observe the action clearly. He waited until Emma exited the room and ran upstairs. He then wanted to view it again. After the second time, he pressed the communication device on his shoulder and stated, "Arrest Mrs. Bradley." Almost immediately, I heard Emma crying from above, and my heart began to race. I knew the officer had asked me a question, but I needed to hear it again. "Are all of your home's rooms under camera surveillance?" This was a line of questioning I didn't want to engage in, but I knew I had to respond honestly. "No, the living room is the only one with a camera," I replied. He nodded, understood, and scratched his chin. "Wondering how long you had the camera in the living room?" I shrugged my shoulders and admitted it was a relatively recent addition. Our gazing battle was disrupted when Emma shouted and implored, "Sam, what the hell is going on? Please help me." I was going to react when one of the young officers exclaimed, "Sir, this is a police investigation. Please go immediately." He was speaking to an elderly man standing in the open front door of my home. With equal authority, the man explained, "I am an official process server, and I'm here to serve Mrs. Emma Bradley." He marched up to Emma, and all three officers took a step closer in case things got out of hand. The man inquired, "Are you Emma Bradley?" When Emma nodded, he held up an envelope and announced, "Emma Bradley, you are served. In addition to the divorce petition, you are prohibited from approaching Mr. Sam Bradley, his home, or his workplace." Because Emma was shackled, he delivered the envelope to the cop who was holding Emma's elbow. As the process server departed, I turned to Emma. I watched as the panic and perplexity left her face, replaced by calmness. She stared at me and asked, "How did you find out?" "Mike told me," I replied. As the two younger cops brought Emma to the back seat of the patrol car, the third officer handed me his business card and requested that I email him a copy of the film. I escorted him to the front door and saw the first car go with Emma. The elder officer had come to a halt about halfway down my front sidewalk. He turned to inquire, "I've seen you at the pit stop before, haven't I?" "Yes, I recognize you, Sergeant," I replied. He informed me, "4 years ago, I divorced my wife for adultery. I pay alimony, child support, health insurance, and the mortgage on the house where she lives with my children and her nasty boyfriend. Maybe the next time I see you at the pit stop, you'll let me buy you a beer and tell me what the hell happened today." I went to work the next day and was able to be relatively productive. Having survived Thursday and Friday, I really grumbled aloud when I returned home on Friday night and discovered my father-in-law waiting on my front step. After pulling into the garage, I got out of the car and called, "Steve, come in this way." As he entered, I was pouring 2 extra-large Knob Creeks. We sat at the kitchen table for a few minutes, gently drinking our drinks until he revealed she was also cheating. I just nodded. "Is there hope?" he wanted to know. I took 2 more leisurely swallows before I was calm enough to respond to Steve in a courteous and respectful manner. It wasn't the first time, and it wasn't with just one man. I had another sip, and then I told Steve the whole truth. It wasn't limited to one individual at a time. He looked at me in surprise, and before he could answer, I said, "I've seen pictures and videos that make me want to throw up." Steve shrank in his seat, turning white. A tear rolled down his cheek. We sat together for a long time, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts and recollections. Emma and Lisa did not learn this behavior from their mother or me. His focused glare was just short of terrifying. Several more minutes passed before Steve stood up and circled the table. As I arose, he wrapped a tight bear grip around my shoulder. After letting go, he stumbled to the door like a 90-year-old man. After opening the door, he turned over his shoulder and declared, "Burning those books was a terrible thing to do." I had totally forgotten about the stunt I used to initiate the altercation with Emma. I nearly yelled when I said, "Hold on." I left the kitchen and returned within seconds with a little box. I gave it to Steve. After opening it, he glanced at me with a shocked expression. I informed him, "I knew you treasured those books and I would never have destroyed them." Then, as if he was too shocked to finish his thoughts, I told him, I went to the bookstore to get a copy. As is my usual morning routine, I sat at the kitchen table on Saturday morning scanning our local newspaper on my tablet. I grinned as I read the Hartford Times local section. West Hartford police are investigating a savage assault on a local man as he left a neighborhood bar in the city's Elmwood district. Michael Schmidt was attacked in Top's rear parking lot at 10:30. His injuries are severe and necessitate hospitalization. According to an HPD spokesperson, the police have multiple leads and anticipate making an arrest soon. It was a bright, sunny November morning. I observed the red Ford SUV park a few spots away from me, and the driver carefully got out of the vehicle. "Hello, Michael. You look like hell." I was in the parking lot in front of Jackson Physical Therapy, sitting on the open tailgate of my Ford F-150 pickup. Mike had an appointment at 10:30 a.m., according to a small bird. "It might be a good idea to get a handicap tag so you can park closer to the building, like the others." He has knee and foot injuries. Mike also suffered a fractured jaw, which will be wired shut for at least another month. "Has the cat got your tongue?" I asked with a smirk. I have to give Mike credit. He shuffled toward me with a cane and came to a stop 5 feet away. He was aware that Greg and I had been questioned by the police and eventually cleared, but I believe he knew we were complicit in his beating. Now he was certain. The hatred in his eyes was palpable. I am sure he was picturing gruesome tortures that would take months to accomplish. I felt convinced Mike and I would meet again in the future. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life constantly looking over my shoulder, so I organized this meeting. Mike turned slowly and began his first shuffle when I stated, "Mary Marie Charm from Milford, Connecticut." As he turned back, I joined, "Susan from White Plains, New York, and Lori Fitzpatrick from Brockton, Massachusetts." I continued, and the hatred in his eyes faded into confusion. "If anything happens to me, such as a plane disaster, drowning while on vacation, or falling down a flight of stairs, I've arranged for my buddies to pay visits to your mother and sisters." I noticed a tiny tremor in his arm when he gripped the cane. "My friends will beat their faces just as they did yours. They will harm their legs in the same way that you have." I wanted to make sure Mike was paying attention. "My friends will kick their crotches just like they kicked yours." I waited a few moments for him to process the information before I finished. "While your mother and sisters are in agony, my pals will convince them that their beating is your fault." I was startled. Mike stared at me for a few moments before giving me a fast nod. I wasn't sure if he was nodding in understanding or declaring a truce. He turned and stumbled toward the door to the building. "I'm pleased to inform you that this was my final encounter with Mike Schmidt. I did grant my divorce lawyer the power of attorney required to manage all legal concerns arising from our breakup. We didn't have children. We earned about the same amount of money. Most importantly, I cared only about isolating myself from Emma." I received a call from my attorney a few weeks after Emma's service. She informed me that we had achieved an agreement that was nearly identical to the terms we discussed. However, Emma will not sign off until she has had the opportunity to speak with you. I used obscenities and received advice. Simply do it. Sit down and let her discuss it with you. I'll agree to have Emma sign the documents and you approve everything so it's official. I'll meet with her for an hour in a conference room at your office after she signed the paperwork. I heard that it would work before the call ended. 3 days later, I was sitting in a meeting room. June Pargle knocked on the door, unlocked it, and informed me that everything was signed off and notarized. She nodded and moved away from the door, leaving Emma standing at the entryway. She had obviously made an effort with her outfit and makeup, but it didn't matter. Even in a sweater and ponytail, Emma looked stunning to me. She went around the table, stooped down, and kissed my cheek before taking a seat across from me. "Are you nervous like I am?" she wanted to know. My first thought was, what an odd way to start, but I took her question into consideration. I shrugged, admitting I wasn't nervous. "I'm feeling more anxious. I want to get this over with so I can move on with my life." When she told me I was blackmailed, tears streamed down her cheek. Mike was going to post videos of Lisa on the internet. Her father had called me early in the divorce procedure and said the same thing, so I was not shocked. It could have started with blackmail, but I viewed the videos. I've watched you orgasm countless times and they were real. You asked for more sex. You begged every second. There wasn't anything forced down your neck. I got angry for a second and needed to cool down. After a few moments, I resumed. You may have felt forced, but that's no reason to ruin our marriage. Just because you discovered Lisa was cheating on her husband does not imply you should follow suit. Emma erupted. I was perplexed and couldn't see any alternatives. What could I have done? You could have. You should have trusted me. Emma rolled her eyes, which made me upset as I proceeded. With Lisa, we would have contacted the police and filed a report. We'll never know if the cops could have gathered enough evidence to do anything. We know his wife and employer would have found out, and we would have felt a teeny bit better. More importantly, we would still be together. Unfortunately, you did not trust me. Truthfully, I'm not sure if you ever did. What type of BS are you talking about? Emma wanted to know. I responded with a query. Do you recall why we split up the first time? Is this the first time? Do you mean during high school? What has that got to do with anything? In high school, you didn't trust me enough to tell me you wanted to assist your neighbor Jimmy and attend his prom with him. You've got to be kidding me. I was a dumb high school student who was concerned about offending my first serious boyfriend. Were you a dumb college student too? I inquired. When she gave me a quizzical look, I continued. Through Labor Day weekend before you entered college, we made love on a raft on Simpson Lake. We agreed to stay faithful and marry after college. Your pledge lasted 11 days. Emma demanded, Are you telling me that you were completely faithful the first year of college? I shook my head, ignoring her useless query. My point is whether you agree or disagree. I wonder whether you ever trusted me. I don't think any of us would argue that I have every reason not to believe anything you say at this point. You outright lie. When you're not lying, you're playing word games and hiding facts in an attempt to steer the discussion in the right direction. I said to Emma, I haven't seen Mike since the conversation started. Emma said with a smirk, What? Mike had a terrible accident. He can't function at his previous level. What exactly are you talking about, Emma? I asked with a grin from ear to ear. You know because I paid to have it happen. Her hands were covering her face as she looked across the table at me with wide eyes. He's a vicious man, Sam. I am terrified for you. I met Mike a few weeks after his injury, and we had a very civil conversation. I'm almost confident I convinced him our association must come to an end. Emma's expression shifted from terror to love. Do you still love me? She nearly yelled. I laughed in amazement at her scream. Emma was clearly irritated, saying, You can't tell me that you don't love me. I shrugged and informed her, You're correct. I can't deny that I adore you. I also cannot say that I love you. What you need to realize is that I am hesitant to devote the time and effort necessary to cultivating the love that remains within me. Emma almost erupted. Why would you even say that? It's simple. I looked into her eyes and told her, You aren't worth it. Emma sank back and shrank in her chair, tears streaming down her cheeks, and I noticed she was breathing through her open lips. I reached inside the folder in front of me and pulled out 3 photos. One by one, I placed the photos in front of her. The first image plainly showed Emma naked with her legs spread wide. In the second image, Emma is on her hands and knees smiling. In the third image, she kneels. The bottom line for me is my future children, and I deserve someone superior to the terrible creature as our mother and wife. Goodbye, Emma. I got up and walked away. A few days later, Emma was sentenced to 50 hours of community service for the domestic violence incident. It took another 7 months for me to finalize the divorce. I sold the house and handed Emma a part of the money. I relocated to a different town while keeping my employment. I have no plans to date right now and have focused solely on my profession. Greg also filed for divorce and continues to live in the same location. Steve occasionally calls and asks how things are going. I enjoy his calls. Greg and I meet on occasion when he is in town for business trips. Life hasn't been kind, but it's still better this way. Greg and I meet on occasion when he is in town for business trips. Our friendship, once based on familial ties, has transformed into a lifeline that keeps us both afloat in the sea of our new realities. On one such occasion, we found ourselves at our favorite spot, Clyde's Barbecue and Bar. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the icy winds outside. We settled into our usual booth, exchanging nods with familiar faces. "How's the new place treating you?" Greg asked, taking a sip of his beer. "It's good," I replied. "Still getting used to the quiet, but I think it's what I need right now." Greg nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, it's the same for me. The apartment's not home, but it's peaceful. Gives me time to think." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the snowflakes drift past the window. The conversations around us were a comforting hum, a reminder that life went on, no matter how tumultuous our personal storms had been. "Have you thought about dating again?" Greg broke the silence, his tone casual but his eyes serious. I sighed, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "Not really. I think I need more time to heal the trust. It's hard to rebuild." "I get that," Greg said quietly. "I feel the same way, but I also think about the future, about not letting the past define the rest of my life." His words resonated with me. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where the pain was a distant memory, a future where I might be happy again. As the evening wore on, our conversation drifted to lighter topics: VDJ work, old friends, even plans for the upcoming holidays. By the time we left Clyde's, the snow had blanketed the streets, turning the town into a winter wonderland. Walking back to our cars, Greg paused and turned to me. "You know, Sam, we've been through hell, but I think we're stronger for it, and I think we'll be okay." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the bourbon in my system. "Yeah, Greg, I think we will be." Back at my place, I sat by the window, watching the snowfall. My thoughts drifted to Emma and the life we had planned together. The betrayal still stung, but it no longer defined me. I was determined to move forward, to build a life on my own terms. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The seasons changed, and with them, so did I. I found joy in small things: VDJ, a good book, a hike in the mountains, a quiet evening by the fire. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. Slowly but surely, I began to heal. One day, while browsing in a local bookstore, I met someone. Her name was Lisa, and she had a smile that lit up the room. We started talking, and before long, I found myself looking forward to our conversations. We took things slow, both of us wary from past hurts, but there was something undeniable between us. As spring blossomed, so did our relationship. Lisa understood my scars and shared her own. We found comfort in each other, a balm for our wounded hearts. Looking back, I realized that the journey through pain had led me to a place of hope. The betrayal that once threatened to break me had, in the end, made me stronger. And in that strength, I found the courage to love again. Greg and I remained close, our friendship a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. We had faced the darkest parts of our lives and come out on the other side, scarred but not defeated. Life hadn't been kind, but it had given me a second chance. And for that, I was grateful. As I held Lisa's hand, watching the sunset over the mountains, I knew that the best was yet to come. Thank you for watching and following Sam's intense journey of betrayal and resilience. Life can be tough, and sometimes the people closest to us let us down in unimaginable ways. But as Sam's story shows, there is always hope for healing and new beginnings. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life experiences that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. Until next time, stay strong and take care.